Hi, my name is James Millard with Olympic Peninsula Sketch Tactics, and I'm here to show you how to tie the Jonathan Farmer / Ben Paul olive and orange micro intruder using one of our new OPST / Jonathan Farmer fly kits. And this is a kit that'll give you all the ingredients you need to tie some of those patterns that we sell from Farmer, including his micro intruders. This gives you enough to tie about 10 flies, give or take, with some extra stuff left over, so you can just fill in the gaps with other materials as you go. So we're going to start by securing our hook in the vise. I like to get it nice and deep, past in back in the gut of that hook, and add some lead eyes. And with a regular intruder, you would have the lead eyes tied on the bottom of the shank. We're going to tie on this top, so this will flip over and ride hook point up like an intruder, which is one of the genius things about the way Ben Paul designed this fly. There's several things in here that make it sweet like that, but that's one of my favorite parts. And I'm going to use a little trick Caleb Hanna taught us, our new ambassador, about mounting eyes. I'll just do 3 wraps one way and 3 wraps the other. Just hold it on to the shank, and I'll come around it twice just to kind of secure it. I'll finish the rest of this off later, but for now, that's not going to add a lot of bulk, so when I finish this fly, I can still have a small head. So I'll run the thread all the way back. We're going to tie in a chenille bump. And I just want to talk about that again really fast. I'm going to go a little bit farther down the hook than I normally would. I would normally start at the, but I'm going to go down to where it kind of stops being straight and add our chenille. Now we're going to just tie this all in and then trim it as we finish. That way we save materials. If we just cut this into smaller chunks, you'll end up wasting more. And so I'll strip the fibers off the thread to tie it in, off the core of the chenille to tie it in. Seat it up. You don't have to worry about that bump too much because you're covering it. So we have the whole piece of chenille that comes in the kit that we're using. Just about 3 wraps. I'll do one more. 4 wraps. Well, yeah. Tie it off on the bottom. So there's no waste there when you do it that way, as opposed to if you were to try to gauge how much you needed, and really good tiers can figure that out, but and for our purposes, we're gonna now add our rubber legs. We got our purple, orange, purple. Got our orange micro barred rubber legs. Not even remotely purple. Slap them in there. Kind of pulling the length on one side. One more secure wrap, and then I'll stretch these around. Get them kind of where I want them. Tie right back into that bump. And then take your, make sure they're kind of in the same spot, so when they ride in the current, they're where you want them. Doesn't really matter to the fish, I don't think, but. Next, we will add a OPST saddle hackle, orange, plain, not barred. Suppose you could use the barred if you had that as well, but we're going to do the plain, and I'm just going to grab a beat up feather because it does not matter. That's a nicer feather. This one's missing some tips. You just come back past where those tips got cut out of there, and we're going to tie a tip in with a scissor fold. So tip, cut, ready to tie in. I'll actually trim the little edges off. Go in. After I tie that in, I make sure my rubber legs didn't get secured in a weird place. And we'll scissor fold this very gently so you don't rip this, or you can even cut the stem with the, some guys will actually use their scissor blade, but these are razor scissors. And so it's folded. Palmer a few. Don't worry about it being perfect. You're going to tie back into it so you can push these fibers back if you'd like. Do make sure you're not jamming your rubber legs down in a weird way with the stem. But that's 2 wraps. Let's do a, my finger with a little saliva. 3. And this is a short fibered feather, so it's taking me a second. 4. Then I'll untie and get kind of back where I want to be and just sort of tie that off. One quick, I'm holding tension while I do this. One quick turn, 2, it's locked down, and then I'm just going to pull my fibers. So you can even take these ones, pull my fibers back. Everything's kind of nice and neat. I do have an unruly bump there, and that's going to make the next step a little challenging, but we'll get past it. We're going to go up to the front and tie in a tinsel. It's green holographic. Pretty cool stuff. Looks really good in the water. Cut the end triangular so you can tie it in a bit easier, and I wrap her down. And I'm laying a nice flat base for this tinsel so it doesn't split and you don't have gaps or fish teeth can get into. A little bit of glue. I like the hardest hole penetrator for this because it's keeping everything together, not just the tinsel to the nice and tight wraps. Don't pull too tight on it, but do want it nice and tight and overlapping. I'd rather it overlap than have gaps. And that's pretty good. I tie farther forward than I need to, because I'll just tie over it. Slap in a dubbing loop. And I usually keep this one pretty short. You know, 3, 4, 5 inches. Make sure you throw your bobbin underneath it twice to shut that loop down. And as you see, I'll tie back into the tinsel a little, not too much, but now to construct a composite loop, it's going to have a base of sculpin wool. Then we're going to add ice dub, olive creepy crawly ice dub, and Amherst, olive Amherst. Lady Amherst pheasant, and then we are going to top it with olive brown ice dub. So, little composite loop. Ben Paul was the one that really came up with the sculpin wool idea, which I think is brilliant. It creates a really good platform for small flies. You can trim it to whatever length you want, so you don't have to worry about like ice dub, you rip it. This is just the base. This is like the base of the pyramid that's holding everything up. So there's our base of sculpin wool. Use our creepy crawly ice dub. This stuff is super fishy. Comes in a bunch of cool colors, but we're using the olive here. Which doesn't really look like olive coming out of the package, but believe me, in the water it looks olive. So I got a pretty good hunk of this stuff, but it's like 3 times as long as my composite loop. So for efficiency's sake, we'll just lay it kind of how we want it in here. Oops. Lay it how we kind of want it in here, and that's just a little bit longer than the actual dubbing. Use both fingers to kind of, and hands to kind of get that where you want it. Any leftover pieces you can throw in there. And you can see it doesn't cover the whole loop. I'm going to cut off the back of this. And that is plenty to stick in the front of this, to stick on the top of this pile of scrim. So you got a bunch in there. I can even add some more, and I probably will. This stuff is fishy, and it really makes the fly pop. One more, a little quick. hunk in here. And I'm trimming the ice dub right away because it, as I said, can be a little hard to work with. So once it's out of there, you're good to go. Take all the fibers that aren't lined up and line them up. Lady Amherst has two sides to the pheasant feather. I like to use the shorter sides to spin in this, especially smaller loops. And I'm just going to grab a couple of small chunks, pull them flat and straight, cut the butts off and lay them in little shifts. You don't need to pull off one big slip of feather and lay it over. Won't necessarily work very well. So again, just a little bit longer than the dubbing, not a ton, for proportion's sake. And just keep coming in here and grabbing workable pieces, pulling it against the grain, coming down. I kind of work it out a little bit. Cut the butt ends off. And if they separate by large gaps like that, I'll just take each little gap, each little chunk of feathers and lay them in there. Takes a minute, it's tedious, but it's worth it. You want pretty full coverage, one more little chunk and we're good. And another tip we learned from Caleb Hanna this weekend, cut off these butts to keep everything easy and in one compact package so you don't snag it. Something else we learned from Caleb this weekend is these feathers will like to stick together, as we all kind of know. You know, see how they're sticking in clumps. He'll wax them. And by waxing them, it makes them kind of stay individual, which is a cool tip. Now we got the olive brown eye stub we're putting over the top, and I'm just going to tear it into usable chunks until I get it nice and short. And I was reminded of how to tie this fly before I tied it by Ben Paul, and he was saying, you know, make sure that the top layer is just a tiny little, you know, just to hold it together. Less is more with these. And the smaller they get, the more that holds true. So here we go. Last bit of ice dub over the top. Our loop is ready to stick in our composite loop is ready to stick in our dubbing loop. This stuff out of the way. I smashed that down together pretty good. Trim it one more time. Again, this is just to make it look nicer and lay in a dubbing loop nicer. A little bit of wax. I'm using some Wapsi. You can also use the low tack. Hairline stuff is really good for composite loops. Make sure that loop's open. The thread's not twisted one way or the other. So you have something nice and flat to work with. Get that wax on there. Make sure your hand is clean of wax so you can get this in. Grab your little loop. And open your loop wide. And it goes. Don't try to slide it up and down too much because you'll off-center everything. And you see everything's laid in there just nice. Come with your OPST dubbing spinner. Hold it shut. So now you can spread everything out, but we're pretty good. So we're just going to knock these Amherst feathers apart and then open this up. And I like to say when you look at it, if we have something you can see through the back of this, make it even and translucent. You don't want gaps and you don't want clumps. You want it even and translucent. If these things get off center, you can go ahead and everything's been trimmed even and ready to spin. My feathers lined up. I like to pinch it off. Oops, this stuff needs to come out. I like to pinch it off right at the bottom of the composite loop and then spin. Draw it down and then work from the bottom up. You'll see the rubber legs want to get tangled in there, but they sure won't. And then you pick these out, and make sure you have the open end of the dubbing spinner, excuse me, pointed towards you. But pick this out, and you can go kind of hog wild picking these out, and I like to just not. So I'm going to run through it. I'll run down from the top of the loop down and from the bottom of the loop up, and we'll get it kind of loosened. The sculpin wool will spin tight, which is good. This is all a real nice bonded assembly. But The drawback is you can sit here too long picking. So we've got a pretty good pick out of here. I just like to find the center of the twisted thread. I like to find the big chunks. Get those, because your brush won't. So now that that's all kind of freed up, take our toothbrush and I do the same thing. I brush down real hard. I'm holding that loop, that composite loop, dubbing spinner open end towards myself, because I'm giving it to this. Because if it doesn't stand up to this, this ain't standing up to Sea Run Cuddy or Resident Coho's teeth. Those fish can wreck a fly if you don't tie it right. I got one stray hair. Get that out of there. So that's good to go. Now I'd like to, again, with the shepherd's hook open towards you, pluck this like a guitar string real gently. If you've got rough fingers from working hard, or playing hard in my case, be careful you don't break the thread, but then fold that back after it's been kind of put into a neutral position, which is what plucking that thread will do. Fold that all back, use your trusty little cup of water, fold it all back, and I pinch, as we were taught in those Jerry French videos OPST put out a long time ago. Pinch that thread and pull back. Pinch that thread and pull back. Pinch that thread and pull back. So everything's kind of going one way. Get it wrapped. Again, keeping that shepherd's hook aimed towards you. This will fall off if you don't. And I wrap back all the way into the tinsel. Trying to pull the butt ends back. One wrap in front of the other. Don't have my bobbin carriage with me. Okay. You should get about 4 wraps. I'm going to get 5 and overdress that a little, but it'll be just fine. So it finishes pretty close into the eyes with just enough room to get your next set of rubber legs in, and then we're just going to top it with ostrich feathers, and that's the end. Pull everything back. I do like a 3 or 4 turn platform, rubber legs again, and the way I didn't show what I did last time, but what I like to do with these rubber legs is throw them in here underneath the thread and pull them around like this to set them, because then I don't need a lot of room to tie in on one side and tie in on the other. I was having a problem, and Ben reminded me the easier way to do that. So one of the fun things about working at OPST is you get to learn from some of the best tiers and fishermen out there. So then I'll fold this back over the top, and the head will be a little clunky looking, but we're going to put an overwing on so it shouldn't show up at all. So my rubber legs are mounted really well on either side, and I'll look at the front of my, can't really see me doing it, but then I'll come back through these to secure everything. I'll come back through the eyes real quick. That's that Caleb Hanna trick, 3 on 3. So now the head's not too big, and I got room for my overwing. I'm going to pick this out very gently, not to bust the tinsel. I'm known to mess things up right when they're just about perfect, so try not to do that this time. But I don't want to pick it up too much, because I'm just going to come in with my toothbrush and do all the hard work, but some of it can be picked for sure. Quick brush with your trusty toothbrush, and I'm getting real specific, and I'm aiming right at that composite loop and getting it all picked out. And I'll brush it back and then flip it over. These flies are effective on just about everything. You could tie this Well, a summer steelhead would absolutely eat a fly this small, and they do all the time. But I mean, anything that eats moving critters. Last step, we'll eat this fly. Last step is an OPST barred drabs, and this is the yellow olive. And I'm not really measuring out how many I grab. I just look and see kind of what looks good. Take that off. And then you can trim the butts or not. Sometimes our drabs will stick together, and if that's the case, you can just simply pluck them around with a comb or a brush. This seems to be okay. So then just an overwing, and that's the end of the fly. The only thing about the overwing is I like to leave it a little longer than you might, just because when it's pulled down in the current, it looks super cool. And that's kind of how I see Ben tie them and how I like to do it, how Farmer does it. So those two are phenomenal tires, and I just kind of copied their brilliance. So here we go. This is the end. And usually on something this small, I would use my cauterizer to clean that up before we would whip finish, but for our purposes, we're just going to tie it off. Imagine that I whip finish this when I'm done. But, yep, just nice little head. We whip finish and glue, and there we go. That's the olive and orange Micro Intruder Farmer / Ben Paul pattern, soon to be available to tie through an OPST Fly Kit. Thanks for watching. Half hitch and super glue it. I forgot completely how to do that because this is so much easier to just do this. But yeah, I mean, it's just I stop hand whip finishing with whip finishing tool, and yeah, but that's just a little bit of bloop.